What crying taught me about myself is that it's okay to cry. You know, it taught me that I'm strong. It taught me that I'm letting go things. You know, crying as a young man is probably one of the hardest things, but it's worth it. And I would say for me, like, yes, I do cry. You get what I'm saying? And I'm not gonna sit on here and lie. Yes, and this I really cry because you have to release that pain somehow. Because if I wasn't crying, I would be seeking for revenge. I would want to bother anything that bothered me. And I don't think that's the right thing to do. And honestly, I think that's another reason why a lot of people are walking around with unforgiveness or like bitterness in their heart. Something I used to do, and I'm telling you, crying is deeper than what we think. And it's okay to cry. It's honestly okay to cry. And this I think this is a hard topic for me to talk about, but we're gonna talk about it anyway. There's plenty of trials and things that happened to me in my life that led me to crying. And I would say one of the hardest things was like people walking out on me in my life, you know. That led me to crying, because just watching somebody say that they care about you and that they there for you, and then they could just walk out on you any moment. They could wake up and just have different feelings for you that day. They could just wake up and feel totally different about you know, and to make you question your worth and make you question yourself, like, who am I? Sometimes I'm just being real with y'all. This is for the ones that can relate. I'm just being real. Some people don't feel like this, but you know, when you've been through very tough trials and tribulations, sometimes you question who you are. You know, and what crying told me about myself is that I'm strong, and that I'm also growing, and that I'm maturing. Because when you cry, you are releasing that pain and hurt. You're expressing it. And you need to express it, because if you don't express it in crying, you'll forever be upset, you'll be angry, and you'll be walking around seeking for revenge. And I'm pretty sure seeking revenge is something God doesn't want anyone doing. And I would just say, like, crying taught me a lot about myself. And I feel like for me, crying is so deep that, like, I don't know, when I hear other people cry, I can kind of like feel what they going through in a sense. This may sound a little crazy, but I kind of can feel the pain, because it's just like when you've been through a lot in this life, you really relate to those who've been through a lot. You could just tell who suffered and who went through just a lot just by the look in their eyes. So crying is definitely deeper than what you think. But like as a young man, I think crying is very important, and it teach you a lot about yourself. And honestly, in Philadelphia, in this city, I don't think a lot of young men are crying, because when you cry, you're supposed to leave whatever it is that caused you pain and frustration right there, because I'm a firm believer that God hears my cry. I have a verse right here, Psalms 56, verse 8. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. So this verse right here lets me know that God keeps track of every time I cry. He also collect my tears, and then he also record each one. in a book. You know, he has notes of my tears and what they for, and you know, I think it's very important to cry. You know, because you're also not just expressing that to yourself how you feel, but you're also expressing to God, who understands anything and everything. You know, crying showed me that I'm maturing. It showed me that I can get through it, you know? Because if I don't cry, I'm going to want to do something about this. I'm going to want to handle things my way. And when I mean that, it's like doing something bad, you know? Because as a young man, I don't really enjoy crying. I don't like crying, but I will shed tears because I want to grow and I want to become a better man. You know, I'm going to cry because I don't want to become the old Narelle. I don't want to hold unforgiveness in my heart. I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to walk around with animosity, you know? And when I think about like who I used to be and the things I used to do, you know, I just, whatever pain I'm feeling, I just allow myself to cry because I'm willing to do anything to not go back to that old version of myself, you know? That's a dangerous version of myself. That version of myself would not be talking on this camera. And I would definitely not be talking to you guys at all, you know? So, you know, when you cry, you're actually helping yourself in a way. You're expressing, and I'm pretty sure God sees 100%. He sees what you're going through, you know? It's very important to cry, and crying will teach you a lot about yourself. And, you know, growing up, I was taught not to cry. You know, it's a sign of weakness. And, you know, which is, you know, to me, I'm still learning what's true and what's not true. I disagree with that statement. I don't think it's a sign of weakness, but I'm not willing to cry in front of people. You understand what I'm saying? Um, but crying will definitely teach you a lot about yourself, and it's very important to express those emotions because, bro, if you don't, you're gonna express them some way, somehow. You know, if you're not crying, expressing that emotion, you're definitely gonna walk around angry, or you're definitely gonna seek revenge. You're definitely gonna get revenge if you're not crying. You know, and that's how it is. You know, when you don't cry, you express that hurt in some way, shape, or form. You know, and I think that's what this city is like really bad because we don't really embrace the young men who needs to cry, who really needs to let go of the pain and the troubles that they may face or maybe put on themselves. You know, the greatest thing I did was be able to cry and be able to, you know, trust God that He's seen what I'm going through and that I didn't seek revenge. You know, that's very difficult. That's very easier said than done. But I think it's very, very important to cry, you know, express yourself, release those emotions, you know, because if not, you're definitely going to end up hurting yourself or hurting someone. It never ends well. When you feel pain, pain needs to be let out. You know, pain needs to be let out some way, shape, or form. You cannot hold on to it. You cannot fake it all the time and make it seem like you're not going through nothing. When you need to cry, let those tears flow because if not, you're holding yourself back and it's giving a sign that you're not changing. You get what I'm saying? Because when you don't cry, you holding in that emotion. And it's like if you don't cry, you're gonna become angry. And that's just a fact. You know, you're gonna become angry. I don't think there's no other way to put it. Because life is hard and life is going to make you cry no matter how tough you are, no matter how big you are. These things that's going on in this world, it will test you, it will break you. And sometimes you're going to go through your darkest things alone, you know? So I think it's very important to cry. And I think it's a sign of growth and maturity. It's definitely beneficial. But it's very important to not hold on to that anger, animosity, and bitterness. I'm still learning how to just cry and release my emotions. And yeah, I love y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one.